Let's go off the grid.
Okay.
Let's go off the grid.
Okay.
I know that you really want to put your phone away.
Yeah.
Let's go off the grid.
Hello, and welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast about sharing your work and life online without handing everything over to big tech surveillance. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and we are currently in season 9 of Off the Grid. I have brought you over 150 episodes of this show, and I am so thrilled to be doing something today that I have never done before, which is talking to someone at one of the tech companies that I most admire. In today's episode, I'm speaking to Patricia Eger, who is the head of security at Proton. Proton is a privacy-focused tech company that offers tools like Proton Mail, Proton Calendar, Proton Drive. You might notice from that list that they are providing privacy-focused alternatives to many of the tools that Google offers. And so when I work with folks to help them leave Google, Proton is typically my first recommendation for where they might go next. I don't have any formal sponsorship or partnership relationship with Proton at all, but I was thrilled to have Patricia on the podcast to talk about Proton's approach to security and privacy by default, how we can all better protect our digital activity and presence, why we love Proton Mail and do want you to use it. And yes, I do have a referral link in the show notes that'll get you a free trial and a discount on their fanciest plan. And I will receive a small payout if you use it. So if you love the show and you want to try Proton Mail, check out our link in the show notes to get in there. Patricia and I also talk about Proton's new Born Private initiative, which is something that they're doing this month to allow parents to claim email addresses for their kids in exchange for a $1 donation to the Proton Foundation. So when you take part in the Born Private initiative, you can claim an email address for a young person, and then it will stay locked and encrypted for 15 years so that it will be there waiting for them when they're ready to have their own email address, and they can do that through Proton. At the end of our conversation, we also get into some of the problems with privacy and AI chatbots. We talk a little bit about Proton's privacy-focused AI tool, Lumo, and more about how all of us could use to be more careful with what we are telling these AI tools we're using if you're using them. I know that many Off the Grid listeners are not, but if you are, make sure you listen to the end because Patricia has some very professional head of security thoughts on how AI is infiltrating our private lives. I'm so excited to bring you this conversation today and really grateful to Patricia for taking the time to speak with me. If listening to this episode has you feeling like, wow, I think it really is time for me to move over to Proton Mail, try out some of these privacy-focused services, as we recommend, take some tiny steps, one tool at a time, to shift the tech that you're using away from ad-sponsored models. If you feel that after listening to this episode, I have created a workshop for you. It's called Opt Out: 5 Steps to Break Up with Big Tech Today. It includes a 90-minute workshop that takes you from totally overwhelmed by the idea of a tech swap to confident about how to step away from Meta, Google, and more. It also includes a tech swap planning and progress worksheet in a PDF form and Notion template, so you can walk yourself through the process of making these changes, and a curated list of tech tools and resources so that you know what are the things that I recommend. If you want to stop using Google search, if you want to stop using ChatGPT, what are the alternates that I have looked at and vetted for you? All of that is included with the opt-out workshop, and it's only $49 to get everything there and more because there's a fun 5-day challenge for leaving social media included as well. So if you want to step back or away from big tech, then I made opt-out specifically for you. It's meant to be a really affordable and supportive resource, and you can find it at offthegrid.fun/opt-out, which is also linked in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Thank you for taking this time to think about your online privacy. It matters so much, more than you might even expect, as you're going to hear in today's episode. So for now, let's dive in, shall we, to my conversation with Patricia Eger, head of security at Proton. Hi, Patricia. Welcome to Off the Grid.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
As listeners know, I'm a big fan of Proton and I recommend all of your products all the time. Could you start off by telling us a bit about your role at Proton?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the current head of security at Proton, and I recently also took over the internal IT function. So it's basically a team together of about 15 people, and we are tasked with basically keeping Proton safe from a broad range of different things that could go wrong, from attackers to people making mistakes and that kind of thing.
I want to talk to you today about privacy and security, and I'd love to start with the Proton slogan, privacy by default. Could you talk about what that means in practice and how it shapes Proton's approach to privacy online?
Basically, what it means is that you do not need to be an expert, or you do not need to have any kind of particular skills or knowledge in tech or in encryption or any of these things in order to be able to use the services and to get, have your privacy insured by that. And so that's really what Proton is for. It's privacy for everyone. You don't need to pay extra for it, or it's part of the product, and anybody who knows how to use an email or a VPN gets that protection by default.
It's something that's so overlooked in the way that I didn't realize it was missing from so many of the tools I was using until Proton made me aware, oh, I'm not getting privacy by default elsewhere. I wanted to ask you about the difference as well between privacy and security, because, I think a lot about privacy online, but I know your title is head of security. So what is the similarity or difference between those things?
It's a good question, and there is overlap for sure, but they are kind of different things. And depending on who you talk to and even what the context of the conversation is, you might get a slightly different answer. But the way I like to see it for Proton is Proton cannot ensure our users' privacy if the company's security is not in check. And so that's my job, is to make sure that the company, doesn't get hacked or nothing goes wrong, so that we can make sure that our users' data remains private. And that really means, for me, privacy is that you have control over your data. So you decide who you share it with. It's not necessarily not sharing it with anybody, but it's you have you choose, and you explicitly share with certain people and don't share with others, and that's entirely in your control in an easy way, and that's privacy. Whereas security is it's a broader topic where, of course, confidentiality is a certain aspect of that, and that's kind of the same thing where it's I choose who I share my information with, but there's a lot more, or there's a lot of different aspects to security that I don't think you would necessarily find in privacy, such as not getting hacked is not necessarily the same thing than maintaining your the privacy of your emails, for instance.
Yeah, I really appreciate that explanation, because I think what's making sense for me is I will say I'm concerned with privacy, but unless that is on a foundation of security, I can use an encrypted email service or have a very secure password. But if I'm doing that with a tool that doesn't have any security protocols or that is being hacked all the time, I may not be as protected as I think. Is that sort of a way to understand this?
I think they play off each other a bit as well. So our emails, right, are private. They're encrypted. We as a company do not have access to them. That's the privacy aspect of it. But the security aspect of it would be you have a password in order to get into that account. That's more of a security thing. And ideally, if you really want to protect yourself, you would have a second factor, so an app or a hardware token or something extra in addition to your password. And so that would be the security aspect of it. And so you cannot have the privacy of the contents of your inbox if your password is weak, or if you don't have a second factor, or you don't have a password. I mean, you can't do that anymore with Proton, but you could imagine that if we didn't require users to have a password, then, anybody who had your username could log in. So that's how you can't really have one without the other, but they're not exactly the same thing.
Thank you for clarifying. That makes so much sense. I think it also bridges into my next question, which is, a lot of listeners of Off the Grid arrive here just beginning to think about digital identity and privacy. where do you suggest they begin? Like, I know that signing up for all the Proton suite is a good starting point, but I'm more curious, like, are there specific things you'd recommend or some behavioral shifts that you think make a big difference for our digital privacy and security?
I have two approaches that I usually recommend to people when they ask me that exact question, and it kind of depends on who it is and what their concerns are, what they're trying to achieve. And I think so. There's two ways to, or at least two strategies that I think are good. One is to start with a product that you don't already use. So typically, in the people around me, unfortunately, a lot of them don't use password managers. And so that's, for me, a good way to introduce them to like the Proton ecosystem, or in general, these more kind of privacy security tools that are also extremely convenient. And if you're not already using a password manager, then you start using one. You don't have to change from another product and then get used to it. And I preferred that UI, or it was green and now it's blue, and all that stuff. So that can be, I think, a good way to get introduced into it and then start using it. And then you hopefully see all of the benefits that come with using a password manager that are, very user friendly. You don't, the benefits don't even necessarily have to be the security, but just like the user friendliness of the thing. And so that's, I think, quite a good strategy. Another one that I've used multiple times, and I guess you could kind of do these in parallel, but is to not go cold turkey when you're switching to something. So like typically with mail, what I've done with a few people is that I've set them up with like a Proton email, and we didn't get rid of the old, I think in most cases it was Gmail or Hotmail or whatever, the other one. You keep them going in parallel. We have a tool that's easy switch, so you can import the entire inbox, your old, or say the Gmail, to make things easier. You import that into your Proton mail, and so you have all of the history of your previous emails. You didn't lose anything. And then you can also set up forwarding rules. So every email that comes into your Gmail gets forwarded to your new one. And keep that going for however much time it takes you to get used to the new setup. And it can be, a week if you're fast. It can be 2 months if you're slower. It doesn't really matter, because you still have that peace of mind that you haven't completely switched. And like if you decide for whatever reason that it's not for you, you still, nothing has changed. You can keep using what you were used to. And I think that like just bringing the level of stress down is helpful to be like, just give it a try. You're not losing anything. It takes maybe half an hour to set all of this up, and then just keep it going in parallel, and then you'll see. And so those are strategies that work quite well.
Yeah, I really appreciate those. So adding in a new tool that's just more convenient in general, like a password manager, I would agree. So helpful. And then also not taking an all or nothing approach. It's not that you have to, start a Proton Mail account and then delete your Gmail that same day. Like, there is no binding contract that says you have to do that. And in fact, I still have my old Gmail account because there's like a family group email that no matter how many times I doth protest, they cannot update my email on it. And so it's the only thing that lands in that Gmail account, and I'm not stressed about it, right? So I think there's more space for like multiplicity and possibility as we continue working on our privacy online.
And something I feel quite strongly about as well is, as you said, it's not all or nothing. You don't need to use all of Proton's products. Like, focus on the things that are the most important to you for whatever reason. And if that's your email, then you start with your email. And then if you think it's great, then you move on to, Docs or, Drive, whatever. You don't need to, like, having a bit of protection is still better than none at all. And so I think, I feel like people sometimes are like, oh, well, what's the point? Because my something else is still in the big tech ecosystem. So like, why bother? Why put in effort? And I think that's not the right mindset to be in, because then you're never going to do anything. So baby steps, fine, piece by piece, take the time you need to take. And honestly, like for certain things, maybe it doesn't matter. And then you're happy to, keep certain things in clear text where, whoever can read it and see it and whatever. If that's okay for you, then that's okay.
Taking small, manageable steps is always the path I want to recommend. And when people say to me, like, well, Google knows everything, so I might as well just stay here, I'm like, there are really compelling reasons to not, actually. Would you like to hear some of the reasons that even just not using Gmail or not using Google search could actually really benefit you? But Off the Grid listeners are definitely interested in those reasons and on board with starting to make these shifts. We've already started talking about Proton Mail, and I told you earlier that I've been a user for over 5 years. I'm a big fan. I'm wondering if you could just break down for listeners, like, what makes Proton Mail different than other popular providers like Gmail or Outlook? I'm sure you have like a bullet list, but I would love to hear it from you and help listeners understand.
There's 2 points that I think are important for people to know the main differences, and they're linked, but to keep it simple. The first is that we do not have access to the contents of our users' emails. So we cannot go looking through them. We cannot monetize what's in there. We're not going to, sell you ads based on emails that you've sent or whatever. If we get compromised, if someone, is able to get into our servers, they will still not be able to read your emails. So like these leaks that you see happen regularly, this is not something that can happen to us. I think that's the main point. And the reason that this works, is the second point, is that our business model is not based on ads. It's based on users paying for the subscription to the service. That's how we make money. We do not need to sell you ads. We cannot sell you ads, but because we cannot monetize your data, we need to get money elsewhere, and that's basically just users paying for the service.
I have this strange experience when I talk to people about email, and they will both be like, yeah, of course there are ads in my email inbox. And also they'll be like, wait, that means they're reading my emails? And I'm like, well, these things are connected, actually.
Indeed, they are.
If the email is free, they're making money somewhere, and often it is through monetizing the content of what you're doing in your emails. And it has become this very quickly normalized practice that once I realized, like, wait, maybe this isn't so normal or it doesn't have to be the case. My email communication can be private to me. That's when I went looking for other options.
It is funny how that notion that if the thing is free, then like, where is the money coming from? I would have thought that we had already covered that a few years ago, but it's still something that not everybody thinks that way, that, it's kind of assumed to be normal that email is free. And when you think about it, you're like, well, then who's paying for all of the servers, the people who are working on it, the maintenance, all that stuff? Like, it's not free. It can't be free.
Yeah, exactly. I've recently made the same switch with like search engines. Like, what makes search engines free? Well, at this stage, like, to me, the degradation of the results, but the ads, the selling of the ads, the AI overviews, et cetera. And I've started paying for search this year. And it's been such a difference. Like, once all of the ads were pulled out, I was like, wow, getting information when I search, what a novel concept.
I can find stuff. Amazing.
Yeah. I have a very basic question that I think also has a complicated answer. So I would just love if you could try to break it down for me, which is, I don't fully understand what it means when Proton tells me my email is encrypted. And then people tell me that, like, an objection sometimes I'll get is, well, if you're emailing people with Gmail accounts, then that end's not encrypted, so it doesn't actually matter if your email is encrypted or not. So could you maybe kind of break that down or tell me, is that objection true? Does it matter? How should I think about it?
It's kind of true. And I think that's all the more reason for people who care about this topic to get their, friends and family and people that they work with on board as well. It's one of these things, like, you can think of it as kind of the herd immunity thing. Like, you can't just protect yourself in isolation. That doesn't work. It doesn't really make sense. What works is if, groups of people protect themselves all together. So indeed, if you're emailing someone who's on Gmail or another not encrypted service, then Google would be able to read your emails because the person on the receiving side is using their service. Proton did set up a way that you could still password protect your emails, so you have an extra layer, and so you can communicate with people outside of the Proton ecosystem with the protection. It's a little bit more, effort, but it does work. But the best is indeed for both sides to be using Proton, in which case then really nobody else except those 2 people can read the contents of the email. So yeah, it's to come back to your question, it's an argument. For me, it's an argument to get the other person to use Proton, not to not use Proton, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, it doesn't make the attempts for privacy futile. It's just a broader argument for why more of us should perhaps care about this. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is also something that I feel really strongly about it is people, us as human beings tend to think about ourselves a lot, which, fine. But I think when it comes to privacy, I would like more people to realize or understand that the decisions that they make, the things that they do or that they don't do, affect other people's privacy. And I think if you see it that way, it's also, I would hope, compelling argument to get people to change. Because changing something for yourself, maybe you're like, oh, I can't be bothered. Like, it's just me. I don't care. But if you can understand that your decisions and your decision to use a certain email provider is affecting the privacy of everyone that you email, maybe then you're like, okay, maybe then it's worth it. And again, within that scope of all the people that you email, maybe there are a few people who, have reasons to be more concerned about their privacy. I think it's, it's a human right, so everyone should be concerned, but some people have, a little extra reason. So again, it's the herd immunity thing. You're not doing it only for yourself. You're also doing it for everyone else. I wish people thought of it this way.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for this analogy, and I couldn't agree more. I think, at Off the Grid, we're very pro-vaccine, very pro-public health. So much so. This is still the most convincing argument for vaccination, right? It's to protect all of us, in addition to ourselves, whether you are the most at risk or not. By being vaccinated, everyone benefits. We all stay well and safe together. I also just keep thinking with the example of email, in the US where I live, it is illegal to open other people's mail that goes through the USPS post. But then with email, we just if we're using some of these non-privacy focused servers, we're just letting other people open our mail. It would be like if you just let a stranger come in and open all the mail that you get in your mailbox before you read it. And that would not only impact your privacy, but also the privacy of anyone who sends you mail. Maybe you're still getting love letters, which, what a joy. I don't think anyone does anymore. But, the person who wrote it to you, that's their privacy too. And now this random third party has seen it, and when it was supposed to be just intended for you. And I really want to continue pushing back against this sort of perhaps cynical or pessimistic, but also just overwhelmed perspective that there's nothing that we can do. There are simple changes that we can make that do have profound effects on our digital privacy.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the analogy with the physical world is a really good one because that's something that people can really relate to. And it's imagine you could only ever send postcards, but for everything, your medical test results and your, the mail from your lawyers, whatever, it's all on a postcard. No one would think that's okay.
There are reasons we desire privacy. There are reasons it is and should be a right. Hi, friends. Amelia here, interrupting this episode because I'm wondering, do you wish that you could quit feeling that icky, sticky misalignment of relying on companies that you know are harmful, like Facebook, Instagram, Google, or Amazon, and instead you could step away from them and redesign your digital setup for a softer, surveillance-free life and business? Do you wish it felt easy to make those shifts instead of you have to turn your entire life upside down to break up with your Gmail account? Do you wish that someone understood that it's really hard to break up with the tech that we're using, even when we know its values misaligned? And that person could guide you through a series of mindset shifts, step-by-step processes, and curated tool swaps so that you can feel the deep relief of alignment? If you wish any of those things, I'm so happy to inform you that I have created a workshop for you. It's called Opt Out: 5 Steps to Break Up with Big Tech Today. And it's my path to take you from totally sick of the algorithm and online surveillance to feeling the sweet relief of digital clarity. Opt Out includes a 90-minute class, as well as a tech swap planning and progress worksheet. And I also have a curated list of tech tools and resources so that you don't have to do all the research to figure out what you might use next. I've provided a lot of suggestions all in one convenient place. So if you're ready to opt out, please head to the show notes to grab this workshop. It's only $49 USD, so it's super affordable and it will hold your hand as you make the changes that you're probably thinking you want to make as you continue listening to this episode. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in to Off the Grid and for purchasing workshops like this to support my work. Again, you can find Opt Out at offthegrid.fun/opt-out, which is also linked in the show notes. Now, let's get back to my conversation with Patricia from Proton. We've been talking a lot about email, and as a millennial, I got my first email account like sometime in college, I think. But now I have like a really young nephew who's like already encountering phones, seeing the internet. I just think that like kids are encountering digital technology, it feels like essentially from birth. And I know that Proton just launched this new initiative, Born Private. Could you tell us about what that is, why it matters?
Born Private. So this is really a call to action for parents to protect their kids online. So it's for $1 that goes to the Proton Foundation. You reserve an email account for your child that can stay locked for up to 15 years. And so it stays clean, empty, clear, encrypted. And when the kid is ready to use it, then they can go ahead and activate it. So that's what Born Private is. And as you said, like nowadays kids use digital stuff from very young ages. Proton did a survey with over 1,200 US parents to see kind of how they felt about this and whether their kids were using, email or social media devices and all that stuff. And some really interesting data that came out of that. Like, for instance, 62% of the parents surveyed said that they would erase their child's digital footprint if they could. And I think that's pretty compelling. Like, you get a sense that parents have some regret that because this is their kids, that it wasn't necessarily their decisions to have a digital footprint to begin with. And so I see this as the parents feeling that if they had a second chance, they would do it differently. They regret doing this. So yeah, these are pretty compelling numbers. 44% of children already have an email address, as you said. Like it's not just adults anymore. And most of those, I think 76%, use Gmail. So from, age of when you're clearly not able to, you're not legally allowed to make a lot of decisions as a child, but somehow you can give up on your privacy, which is kind of concerning.
And just the way that we know so many of these tech tools paid for by advertisers build profiles on users. And I was encountering this on social media in my 20s, and I was so impacted by the behavioral manipulation of the algorithm and being pushed toward things. I can't imagine experiencing that when I was 10 or 15 or 19 even. Okay, so you said parents can reserve email addresses for $1 and they can keep them locked for up to 15 years. So do they get to choose how long, or can you just log in at any point? How does that piece work?
Yeah, you can activate it anytime for up to 15 years. So if your kid might already be 10 years old or 8 or whatever, so you don't need to wait 15 years, but you can, if your child is born like now, they can wait until they're 15 in order to get it set up.
Well, I'm curious how you're thinking then about digital identity beyond email. Proton does more than just email. What are some of the other ways, not just in the case of minors, but also in the case of adults, like tools that Proton's wrapping in to help us protect our, online footprint?
Proton, I think a lot of us hope that at some point we'll have the full digital ecosystem. And we're working towards that already. And there's a number of products that already exist. So email was the first, as we mentioned, then VPN came. I don't remember the order, so I'm going to say these in no particular order.
Yeah.
There's a calendar. We have Drive, so storage, file storage in the cloud. We have Proton Docs, so the kind of equivalent of Google Docs, but again, encrypted. We have Sheets. There's a wallet. There's the password manager, which is, I think, one of the best products that we have. And yeah, so those are the ones that are currently launched, and there's a few in the making that'll hopefully be released pretty soon. But so yeah, the hope is to really have no more excuses. Like everything that you need in your online life can be done using encrypted tools. You do not need any of the clear text stuff.
I'm really excited about this, and I've loved watching all the tools launch because as someone who helps people, choose different tech, change platforms, etc., like a common objection I get is like, well, I do everything in Google or I do everything with Microsoft. And I think that the like all-in-one nature of these tools and companies becomes one of the biggest barriers to changing because it feels like you have to literally overhaul your whole online life to make a shift. And we already talked before about why that's not true, like how you can, change one thing at a time, explore just the solutions that make sense for you. But I just think that like an all-in-one solution is really compelling for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and we want to get there, and that's also one of the reasons why I think taking that angle from kids is an important one, because you see now children use Google for like at school, and then they get used to it, and then that's what they like because they know how to use it, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's also, you need to break that cycle, right? Because also, whether it's in the professional world, I mean, at work, if you've always used, I don't know, Microsoft for your entire career, you'll just you're used to it. It. And so when maybe you go out to your next place and you get to choose, you'll be like, oh, I'm just going to take Microsoft because I'm used to it. And so getting like the next generation to, be acquainted with a different set of tools, I think is also really important if you want to have actual like real impact when those people grow up and become adults.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I feel like it was a few years ago that I started reading critical analysis on like why Google was donating Chromebooks to so many school districts. And in my mind, I'm like, how generous? And the people were like, no, Google wants you to think it's generous, but what they're doing is training people into the Google ecosystem from elementary school on. And again, it's like that hadn't occurred to me until it sort of becomes clear like how entrenched we get in different technologies. I also think about, in the US, when we talk about so many different technologies, but like with government contractors, there's a sort of saying that like nobody gets fired for buying IBM. And they just like continue to do it over and over and over again because these solutions become sort of like reified as the obvious choice. And then our job is to, my job as a tech podcaster is to help people see like it doesn't have to be the obvious choice. And there's a lot more at stake here than you might realize. And now with Proton and others, we like finally have tools that we can turn to instead, especially for, again, like non-technical audiences, because I have definitely tried to stretch my abilities and, like install an instance of a private search engine on my computer, but it's just beyond kind of what I'm easily capable of for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, then it might work at first, and then you need to make an update, and nothing works anymore. And it's like that's why the whole privacy by default thing is really important, and that's one of the things that I really like about Proton. I was thinking back to kind of my journey with Proton, and I was a paid user, but many years before becoming an employee, so I feel like I contributed. And one of the things that I remember, and one of the reasons why I was drawn to Proton myself was I was doing an internship so many, many years ago, and I was talking with one of the other people from my office. I don't know what about, but apparently it was important because he wanted to send me some data or some documents. And so he said, "Oh yeah, send me your PGP key and I'll send you the files like encrypted." And I was like, "I don't know what that means." I'm like, okay, here we go. Got back to my desk and I was like, what does this mean? How do I do it? How do I set it up? Like, why is this so difficult? Why do I feel so stupid? And I think I managed, but it sucked. Like user experience wise was not fun. And then when I discovered Proton, I was like, oh, they do this all for you. And this is great. You don't need to feel like an idiot, or you don't need to know and spend, I don't know how many hours researching this. It just works. And that's beautiful.
Yes, such a relief. I don't have to search Reddit threads forever where people just make me feel like an idiot. Yeah, it is nice just to have such an easy tool, and a tool that also I can like not just use myself, but set up my parents in too, right? I feel like it is accessible for generations. We've already talked about kids, but also folks who just don't feel as tech savvy. If you can use any of the other popular tools out there, you can use Proton. I feel like I'm just obviously gushing about your company and your services. And I want to be clear that like, this is not SpawnCon. I don't have a formal relationship with Proton. I'm just excited about these tools. To wrap up, I wanted to ask you a little bit about AI, particularly Proton's tool Lumo. So I would love to hear about Lumo first, and then maybe just talk a little bit about AI and privacy from there. So what is Lumo and what makes it different than other AI tools?
So yeah, Lumo is Proton's AI assistant chatbot. So just like you could talk to or ChatGPT or Claude, whatever your preferred chatbot is, you could instead talk to Lumo. So this is our AI. Main difference again being that we're not spying on our users. We don't use the data for training or then to sell you stuff. It's really just supposed to be helpful. And again, you pay for it, so that's there's probably a free version as well. But the business model is users pay for it, and so we don't need to monetize their data. So that's the main difference. The queries, so the prompts, the things that you ask it, we do not see them. We do not keep them. We don't do anything with them. So just, think of having like a private conversation, basically.
And then I'm just curious, like, knowing that the things that we discuss and share through Lumo are private, where does the training data come from then? Because with other tools, like privacy has been a major issue with that too, right? Or some of the companies that own those tools have illegally scraped parts of the internet to train them. And I'm just curious, like, if you can share, like, what has Proton's approach to building an AI tool been like on the level of privacy?
I don't know all of the details, if I'm honest, but generally Proton is built on a lot of open source technology. And I believe that some of the models behind Lumo are open source. I think you can also, if not already the case, coming soon, to be able to choose the model. And so different models were trained on different sets of data. And I think there was some that were created in Switzerland that were supposed to, with the aim of having ethically trained models so that are not stealing data, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I would need to defer to the folks at Lumo to give you more complete answer.
No, that's already so helpful, though. I think that there's so much just like lack of knowledge, my own included, around models and different ones that are used in tools. And so much of what I see is just AI tools that are, wrapped on top of OpenAI or ChatGPT, right? And so just even being clear, like, that's not what Lumo is. It's based on different models that are training on different data, considering different privacy dynamics. I think that's already helpful to know. And this is another area where I'm trying to help people increase their knowledge and critical thinking skills around not all AI is the same. And there's a large base of off-the-grid listeners who don't want to use AI at all, which I can understand. But I think for those who are using chatbots, it's not ChatGPT or Claude or bust. There are so many other models, so many other tools that are concerned with ethics and privacy and things. And so while I have you here as a head of security, you think about things like this all the time. Like, what are you seeing as sort of the future of privacy and security with AI changing the landscape of the internet? And maybe particularly like for people who are using chatbots, what do you think they should be worried about or careful with when it comes to privacy and security?
If we're talking specific about AI chatbots and you're not sure whether you find them creepy or not, or maybe nothing happened that would make you find them creepy, ask the one you use most often what it knows about you. And I'm pretty sure that then it'll become very creepy very quickly. There's been lots of people who've done this experiment. This is not something new that I'm inventing. Like, people have written articles about this as well. It's like, wow, they know so much about me. It's really creepy. But I think that's something that, the more people realize that if their entire lives are intertwined with AIs, like, they already know so much about you. The more you use them, the more they're going to, like, create this profile about you. and probably the less comfortable you'll be with it. So I'm hoping that that's going to become a realization. I would hope that we don't need to get to that point for people to consider alternatives, but I'm not sure that that's realistic because they are convenient and they are everywhere, and there's a lot of, maybe not pressure, but there's a lot of hype of like, you must be using it, you should be like, you can do all these great things with it. But yeah, I think that sooner or later there will be, studies that come out and more scientific analysis of what the impact is, and there will be incidents where, leak of this or that will be used against someone in really horrendous ways. Just, like social media has even just very recently been, shown to have very negative impact on some people. AI is next. There's no reason that it's not going to happen, and it may be worse. I don't know, or at least it won't be better.
I feel like what I'm taking away from this is that many AI tools feel private because it feels like we're just talking to this one other thing on the end of it, but they're not concerned with your privacy as the user. Like, that is not what most of the models are concerned with. Now, of course, with something like Lumo, you do have a tool where that chat is encrypted and staying with you. But yeah, I just always try to run myself through a lens of like, if I would not tell this to a random person at the grocery store, I'm not going to tell it to the internet.
Yeah.
And that applies to chatbots too.
It's safe, but it's crazy that you have to actively remind yourself of that because they are so convenient and they're so everywhere that it's easy to forget and to let yourself kind of just drift and then get to the point where you're like, well, they already know everything about me, so here's my medical records and like tell me what's wrong with me. Like it shouldn't be this vicious cycle of it knows everything, so it might as well know more.
Yeah, and we can wrap where you sort of led us earlier to the herd immunity piece of like, we all keep us private, we all keep us safe by also not telling chatbots things about other people. If you are trying to get support with the relationship dynamic, but you're telling the chatbot who this person is and their name, like that's a lot of information that other person might not want you to share. And I think that there are a lot of like blurred lines around privacy, security, and even just like consent when it comes to AI tools. I've had this come up in my own work, people, uploading documentation I've made for them to AI or things that I didn't agree to that were then shared with models because in their mind, they're like, well, this is just helping me. And in my mind, I'm like, that's infringing on my intellectual property. And I think that we need to be having more of these conversations. So I'm grateful for you sort of bringing that lens in too.
Totally agree. I think we need to think about those around us as well as ourselves.
Can you tell people where they can find all of the Proton services and choose the ones that they maybe want to start using?
Yeah, for sure. So the website is proton.me, M-E, and there you'll find all of the different products. You'll also find the Born Private campaign under mail. And so, yeah, you should find all of the information. You can also know that all of the products also exist. They're free versions of them as well. So if you're not sure or if you don't have the means, you can also use the free versions. There's a few less features, but, can still use them.
I love that. So yes, folks, try things out. It can be free to start. If you love it, you can invest. If not, you can go back to your old tools if you so choose. But thank you so much, Patricia, for being here. Thanks to Proton for everything that you all do to protect our privacy and security online. And until next time, we will see everyone off the grid.
I kinda hate social media, feeds on my brain like a bacteria. If you read my Wikipedia, it'll say I kinda hate social media. Post a picture of myself, sacrifice my mental health, use your product, time to sell. I would rather go to hell. Do you like this?
That was an abridged version of Social Media by Surfer Boy and Rectangle. To hear the entire song, find Surfer Boy on Spotify or head to the link in the show notes. Thanks so much to them for sharing the song with us, as well as to Melissa Caitlin Carter, who sings our theme song that you hear at the start of every show. I'm your host, Amelia Fruby, and if you enjoyed this episode, I hope you will download the free Leaving Social Media Toolkit at offthegrid.fun/toolkit. Until next time, I will see you off the grid.